Welcome back everyone to my talk on Moonotheism. These were the Al-Makka temples that I discussed previously. They were in Ethiopia, Abyssinia back in the day, and of course there were equivalent temples in Yemen because this was one culture, one civilization, one religion. Notice it says here that in front of the building was a platform with 6 pillars. The Kaaba originally had 6 pillars inside it. It now has 3. The original Kaaba had 6 pillars inside it, just like this ancient Babylonian worship of the god Sin had temples with 6 pillars. Note here, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pillars with 7 gaps. These are gateways between the secular and the holy. So once you go through these gaps, these are 7 pathways, 7 prayers. Notice this one, same religion, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pillars. Of course, this one broken. 5 gaps, 5 daily prayers. Understand, there seems to be some kind of correlation here. This is the paper that I spoke of previously by Ian D. Morris. It's called Mecca and Macoraba. Recommended reading if you want to get into the topic. Provides a great deal of very, very helpful information, perspectives. And then I also want to introduce nabatea.net. If I recall, this is the website by Dan Gibson, and this article suggested solutions for issues concerning the Arabian maps in Ptolemy's geography. A couple of elements here that I want to bring to your attention. Ptolemy never visited most of the sites listed in the geography, so he had to rely on merchants and provide descriptions. Thus, the accuracy is questionable, as we discussed previously. Now, mistakes or inventions told him by merchants and travelers became standard features on future European maps based on Ptolemy. So these mistakes carried forward. So it's taken some time to unravel all of this and eventually create accurate maps. Many of the names Ptolemy lists are obscured because they are written as the Greeks knew them or heard them, not as they might have been called in their original language, such as Arabic in the Middle East. Now, the reason I bring this up is as follows. We're going to see terms like the Karab El. Now, El doesn't necessarily refer to Yahweh, the god Yahweh, the Israeli, Jewish, Christian god. El also meant a deity, a major deity, right? So this could be Baal, this could be Al-Makka, right? Makka, the moon god, Sin, right, of Babylon, who became the same god of the major pantheon of Yemen. You'll see terms like Karab El, right, which is really short for the Karab Baal, in this case, Karab Baal, Karab Baal. We'll see things like Muqrabba, right? Mu implies one who does what follows in the next word, one who carries out the instructions. The Karabal, we've seen a few references to Karabal. Muqrabba becomes Macoraba within the Greek. As it gets transferred into the Greek language, sounds change. The Yemeni term Muqarrab became the Arab term Abd al-Malik. So this term eventually superseded and replaced the term Muqarrab. I believe there was an attempt to get away from the Yemeni roots. There are hints towards Yemen within the Hadiths, within the Quran, and so on. But this does seem to be a major source of these beliefs, as we discussed already. But there's an attempt to minimize these connections to Yemen. But the Muqarrab was a warrior, priest, king. Muhammad was a warrior, priest, king. In fact, a warrior, priest, emperor is what these people were. The Abd al-Malik was a warrior, priest, emperor. Notice, though, that we do see lots of references to Abd al-Malik went to Jerusalem, and there's a reference to a particular Abd al-Malik from, I think, 685 to 705 in that period. But it's a title. It's not a name. Abd al-Malik is a title. The Muqarrab is a title. Muqarrab is like saying Caesar. Abd al-Malik is like saying Caesar. When I say Caesar, which Caesar do I mean? Everyone's going to go Julius Caesar, because that's the one you associate with Caesar. But there were 12 Caesars. Just as there were numerous Abd al-Maliks, there were numerous Muqarrabs. We have many of these Abd al-Maliks. We had many of these Muqarrabs. One who carries out the will of the deity. Muqarrab Baal is the Muqarrab of Baal, one who carries out the will of Baal. And you'll see Karabal, Karabili, we've seen this come up regularly. Keep this in mind. because Charles Forrester comments the modulation for the sake of euphony in some of the Arabic consonants by the Greeks and Romans, for instance, the substitution of the Greek theta for the Arabic dal. So when they transliterated from one language into another, they altered the sounds, altered the spellings. So the root is still there, the idea is still there, but you've now got these different letters. So this would account for some of the changes that occur. As thamata for dama, thaba for dahban. These look almost completely different, but they're the same word. Theba for teba, deba, thawan for dawan. There is the change of the S and the T for D, as safar for dafar, tamala for al-demlu. Understand? So sometimes these disparate looking words actually are identical, which is why I state that Mukaraba and Macoraba are identical. Mukaraba, Macoraba. This is simply this word transliterated into the Greek or the Roman. Then you got the S exchange for the Z, as Sibi or Sisipi for Zebed, Port Zebed, Sibi, Sisipi, Zebed. You wouldn't know unless you went to do the research that these are the same terms. Or the Greek pi for the Arabic ba. Pi for ba, as safar for sabr, or the n for the al. The Arabic termination of in for the Hebrew el is not an unusual change, and that's from Charles Forrester, The Historical Geography of Arabia, Volume 1. Hopefully this is enlightening, useful, so let me get to our presentation. So the Sabaeans, a little bit of historical context. The Sabaeans carried out trade by land and by sea, leading to massive growth from the 18th century BC onwards. They established colonies along the Red Sea and Ethiopia. They had highly lucrative spice trade, especially frankincense and myrrh. The Sabaeans lived in the lands of Sheba as regional monarchies. The first king was Karab al-Bayan, Karabal, Mukaraba, because the plural of the Karabs is the Mukarabs, Mukaraba, ruling during the 700 to 800 BC period. And this is the Karab el, the root Karab al-Bayan. Note that Karibi Ilu, when you came across this term in the previous episode, we discussed him, was a Mukarab of the Sabah region in 700 to 680 BC. The name Karibi Ilu in Akkadian matches Karab al-Bayan in Sabaean. So Karibi Ilu, Karab al-Bayan, again, there are differences here, but they're the same term. Go to another language, the term changes, even though it's the same. So it's combined of Karabal, which means one who carries out the instructions of El, your deity, and Ben or Bayan, one who removes punishment. So this is a representative of the deity on earth. He's a warrior, priest, king. This is a concept that is only found within Islam now. Now, Saba was best known in context of the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This is a separate story, we're not going to go into that. And various writers have also cited the Sabaeans in their narratives, right? From the Assyrians to the Greeks and the Romans in the 8th century. Saba is mentioned twice in Quran 27 and Quran 34, and as people of Tubba, Qawm Tubba, in Quran 44 and Quran 50. Now, miqrab, muqarab. Understand the similarities there, the linguistic similarities, even the slight spelling similarities. But look at the sounds, right? MQB, MRB, MK, hard C, Q, and also the Yemeni Q becomes an Arabic K. Makka becomes Makka. Again, slight changes in the language, but still consistency. Now, the what? Miqrab, Macoraba, the what? Miqrab, plural, maharib. The prayer niche in the mosque, indicating the direction of prayer, is made up of an arch supporting columns. We just saw supporting columns earlier, these doorways between the columns. That was your doorway into the sacred, into the holy. And the space between them, notice they recognize the space between them, that's where you go through, that's where you enter through. And because you cannot enter into the sublime yourself, you send prayers. Within a flat or reset form, it gives the impression of a door or a doorway. And here's a miqrab. Now, the Kaaba, outside of the standard Islamic narrative, nothing is known of its history. There's speculation, very little is known of its history. The only reason for presuming the Kaaba was in existence in the 2nd century AD is the mention of Mecca as Macoraba by Ptolemy. This is said in the Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 4. This is an error. Now, I've already discussed that error in the previous slide on Bochart in 1646. To correct this error, the very earliest reference to Mecca being Macoraba was by this person, Bochart, in 1646. It is not present on Ptolemy's maps. Ptolemy refers to Mecca in terms of, or Macoraba, my apologies. Ptolemy refers to Macoraba as a temple, as a holy place, as an altar. In a concise encyclopedia of Islam by Paranda, little is known of the history of the Kaaba outside Islamic tradition, but there's reason to believe that the shrine was an active pilgrimage site as early as the 2nd century. The geographer Ptolemy calls the city Macoraba with the significance of miqrab, or temple. Macoraba, now obviously he associates Mecca with Macoraba, but understand Ptolemy never made the connection. This was made by Bochart, and everyone else just assumed that that was something said by Ptolemy. So they're referring to the 1646 idea without going back further and checking that that's actually not the case. But however, Ptolemy does refer to this in context of a miqrab, of a temple. So miqrab is temple. So now you've got a connection between miqrab, Macoraba, and the Mukaraba. So it seems that these all have a similar function within these words, similar sound, meaning, and so on. Mecca, known to the ancient geographers as Macoraba and to the Arabs as Makkah. The name Macoraba means temple in various Semitic languages, and this probably referred to the Kaaba. Glaser believes this name may have signified the same as South Arabian or Ethiopian miqrab, or temple. Macoraba. Okay, so now you've got a scholar, major scholar, saying that, hold on, Macoraba seems to be related to the term miqrab, and miqrab is Ethiopian. Again, we know that this oldest temple was in Ethiopia, as we opened with in the series. And in modern Islamic usage, miqrab means prayer niche. Notice the propylon here at the fake entrance, the faux entrance. This is a common feature of miqrabs. There's also a common feature of the worship of the Babylonian moon god Sin, who in Yemen was known as Makkah.